When we think about the moon, usually it's about things we can, see or measure easily. Moonlight, right? Or the ocean tides that push and pull. But what if those are just, well, kind of like background noise, masking something deeper? We're going beyond the familiar today. We're diving into a pretty radical scientific idea. It suggests the moon's main influence isn't light or even classical gravity as we usually think of it, but maybe a subtle, coherent energy field, something that goes right through us.
That's exactly the idea. It's the core of our source material today. We've pulled together insights from Part 13 of 30, the moon, gravimetric modulation, and the resonant biology of life on Earth. And this is part of a much bigger framework called the Graviton Pressure Theory, GPT for short.
Right, GPT. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack this hypothesis. The moon isn't just a nightlight or a tide puller. It's more like a celestial metronome, kind of orchestrating life by tweaking this graviton pressure field around Earth.
Precisely, modulating it dynamically.
Okay, let's unpack this. This deep dive suggests we've maybe been listening to the wrong signal for centuries. Hearing the splash, maybe, but missing the underlying hum.
That's a great way to put it. And before we even get into the new physics, we have to acknowledge the mystery that sparked it. There are just so many biological rhythms that clearly, undeniably track the moon. But our standard explanations, they just don't quite cover it.
Yeah, the source material really digs into why the usual suspects fall short. Starting with moonlight, that explanation hits a wall pretty fast, doesn't it? The accessibility problem.
It really does. I mean, think about the sheer diversity of life. How does moonlight reach microbes deep in the soil, or cave-dwelling species, or maybe more dramatically, that synchronized coral spawning? It happens across vast reefs, often in deep or mucky water. Sunlight barely gets there, let alone faint moonlight.
So the signal needs to reach everything, regardless of whether it can see the moon.
Exactly. And then there's consistency. Even if light could reach, it's so variable. You've got clouds, weather, the moon's angle changing. It's a noisy signal. Yet these biological responses, like certain hormone shifts, they stay synchronized globally, very precise.
A light-based signal would be messy. You'd expect delays, inconsistencies.
You would. Then you look at classic Newtonian gravity. Okay, it explains the big ocean bulges, the tides, fine, but it doesn't scale down well. Not to the cellular level. Tidal forces are just too weak, too diffuse to explain coordinated actions in tiny organisms or isolated ones. The gravitational difference across a single cell, it's practically zero.
That's the real puzzle, isn't it? If classical gravity is so weak at that scale, how could any gravity-related signal work? Wouldn't the big tidal forces just drown it out?
But that's where the GPT framework pivots. It argues we're looking at the wrong type of effect. It's not about the sheer magnitude of the pull, like in tides. It's about the coherence, the structure, and the penetration of this proposed graviton pressure field. It's about how the moon modulates that field. Think phase locking, like tuning forks resonating, not just brute force.
Okay, so it's a different kind of interaction. And the evidence that something non-classical is happening seems pretty strong. The source lists some compelling examples of this lunar connection, even when things are shielded.
Oh, absolutely. In plants, it's remarkable. You see leaf movements in certain legumes, like beans tracking the lunar cycle. Even in sealed labs, constant artificial light, no windows, they still know.
They still know the rhythm.
Yeah, and studies on seed germination. Rates fluctuate reliably around the new and full moons. It's like they have this deep physical clock completely independent of light cues.
And that internal clock shows up in the oceans too. The grunion fish. Their egg-laying timing is almost perfect, right? Hitting the highest tides during new and full moons.
Incredible precision. And then there's the biggest migration on the planet, plankton, moving up and down in the water column. Their movement patterns subtly shift, tracking not just the water tides, but what the source calls the underlying gravimetric tides, a finer signal.
And for us, well, the human connection is maybe the most intriguing. The source points to studies showing that statistical link between menstrual cycles and the lunar month, and even those sleep labs you mentioned, total isolation from light cues.
Sensory deprivation, almost.
Researchers still see changes around the full moon, different melatonin levels, shifts in REM sleep latency, more vivid dreams. Something is getting through those walls. Something is influencing our brain chemistry.
Which brings us squarely to the theory itself, graviton pressure modulation. So this graviton flow field. How should we picture it? Is it like an invisible river flowing through everything?
That's a decent analogy. The GPT suggests the universe is filled with this constant directional pressure, made of gravitons, the hypothetical gravity carriers. But instead of just space-time bending, Gravity here is seen as an actual flow, a pressure field passing through all matter. And the moon, as it orbits, doesn't just pull Earth in the old way. It stirs this field, changes its structure, its coherence. It modulates it.
Okay, so why does that work better than light or tides for explaining these biological sinks?
Penetration. That's the absolute key. This graviton pressure, according to the theory, goes through everything. Rock, water, tissue, lead shielding, you name it.
So whether you're a microbe deep underground, a fish in the abyss, or us in a building, you're immersed in it.
No hiding from it. It's a truly universal signal.
Right. And the type of signal is different, too. It's not hitting specific light receptors. It's proposed to work through direct structural interactions, physical interactions with mass, and critically, with water.
Ah, water. So the water inside our cells becomes really important here.
Absolutely central. What's fascinating here is this theory views the water in our cells not just as, H2O sloshing around. It sees it as highly structured, almost like a liquid crystal, held in specific patterns by proteins and membranes. And this structured water is incredibly sensitive to vibrational changes.
Like a tuning fork, you said earlier.
Exactly. When the moon modulates the graviton pressure field, this water structure resonates. It vibrates in response. It acts as a conduit, maybe even an amplifier for these field harmonics.
So the cell isn't passive, it's actively resonating. And the cell membranes, they're not just walls.
No, they become biological transceivers, essentially. They respond to these tiny graviton-induced pressure shifts, and that response can influence ion channels, how signals move inside the cell, everything. We're not just bystanders. We are, in a sense, living antennas tuned to this cosmic rhythm.
This framework really gets interesting when you apply it to the lunar phases. The source argues each phase isn't just a different amount of light, it's a unique field configuration with real biomechanical effects.
Let's break that down. Start with a new moon. The source calls this configuration the pull of restoration. It involves field compression. This is when the moon is between Earth and the sun. Their gravitational vectors line up, more or less. And this alignment is thought to concentrate or compress the graviton flow field impacting Earth.
Okay, compression, like the field is pressing inward. What does that mean biologically?
The theory links this compression state to things like cellular introspection, repair, resource consolidation, a time for turning inward. In plants, this is supposedly when roots deepen growth happens below the surface. Systems reset, prepare. There might be preparatory hormone shifts.
An inward restorative pulse.
Yeah.
Then the opposite happens at the full moon.
Exactly, a dramatic shift. The source calls this the pulse of release. Field expansion. Now Earth is between the moon and the sun. Their gravitational influences are pulling in opposing directions. This opposition creates divergent vectors, leading to a decompression or expansion effect in the field around Earth.
Expansion, so outward energy,
Yeah.
activation.
That's the idea. Expression, release. Think ovulation in many species. That coral spawning we keep mentioning. In humans, maybe that heightened sensory awareness, the more intense dreams people report. An outward expression.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The moon isn't just marking time. It seems to be dynamically sculpting our internal state, our cellular tension, moment by moment, in sync with its orbit.
Oscillating between this inward pull and outward push.
And if this physical modulation is real, it throws a whole new light on ancient cultures and practices, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. It reframes so much that's often just dismissed as, folklore, superstition. The source even suggests these ancient systems might be like fragmented echoes of a once coherent science. An empirical understanding of field effects.
Like astrology, instead of, predicting destiny.
Right, forget the mystical interpretation for a moment. The source suggests looking at it as a kind of gravimetric harmonic system. Planetary alignments wouldn't be sending magic rays. They'd be creating complex interference patterns in this graviton field, nodes of constructive or destructive interference. And these subtle shifting patterns could physically influence things like our neural oscillations, maybe hormonal rhythms, real physical pressure differences.
Wow. And that ties into the idea of birth alignment, too. That's a big one. The theory says the moment a baby takes its first breath, its whole system, the cells, the developing nerves, gets tuned.
Physically tuned to the specific graviton field modulation happening at that exact moment. It's not arbitrary. It's proposed as a field calibration event. It sort of locks in the organism's baseline vibrational state, which then influences how it resonates with the ongoing field changes throughout its life.
Like setting the default station on a radio. You're calibrated to resonate more strongly with certain cosmic frequencies.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah. The background signals are always there, but your initial calibration influences your sensitivity.
We see echoes of this long-term thinking in ancient calendars too, right? Not just the moon, like the Chinese lunisolar calendar tracking the moon, sure, but also Jupiter's big 12-year cycle, the 19-year Metonic cycle.
Why track those huge, slow cycles? Because according to this theory, those long-term alignments of massive bodies would create really significant recurring interference patterns in the graviton field. The source speculates these calendars might have been, in effect, intuitive field recorders, preserving knowledge of historically important fields configurations.
It makes you wonder, if we connect this to the bigger picture, maybe these ancient cultures weren't just observing the sky. Maybe they were, in their own way, intuitive field physicists, sensing the pulse of the cosmos long before we had words like graviton.
Attuned to the coherence, the patterns, even if they described it metaphorically. Absolutely.
Okay, so if this is a real physical thing happening all around us, permeating us, how do we actually measure it? Move beyond theory. Direct graviton detection, it's still way off, technologically speaking.
Right, extremely difficult. So the focus has to be on the secondary effects, the results of the modulation.
What does the source suggest? How can we potentially detect these subtle shifts?
Well, one path is using incredibly sensitive instruments we already have, like atom interferometers. These devices use lasers and cooled atoms to measure tiny variations in gravitational fields with amazing precision. You wouldn't see the graviton itself, but you might detect the rhythmic pressure changes in the field, the ripples coinciding exactly with lunar alignments.
Okay, measuring the field's behavior directly. What about measuring the biological response?
That's the other major avenue, resonant biological coupling. If life really is a tuned oscillator, we should be able to measure that resonance under controlled conditions. Put subjects in labs, shield them completely from light, sound, temperature changes, all the usual cues, then measure things like melatonin levels, EEG brainwave patterns, heart rate variability during specific lunar phases. Look for biological signals that are phase-locked with the moon, even when all other known environmental inputs are removed.
Searching for the biological echo of that field modulation.
Exactly, the fingerprint.
And if this GPT model or something like it turns out to be right, the applications are kind of mind-bending. Agriculture, for instance. We could go way beyond just plant-by-the-moon folklore.
You could potentially optimize planting and harvesting based on verified pressure states. Remember the new moon compression state linked to root growth? Maybe there's a real physical basis for why ancient farming calendars timed things that way.
And medicine. Wow. Chronotherapy based on lunar phases.
Lunar phase-aware chronotherapy. Imagine timing medications or therapies to coincide with the new moon's pull of restoration, when cellular repair might be naturally heightened. Or knowing that the full moon's pulse of release might correlate with heightened sensitivity or inflammation, and adjusting treatments accordingly.
Timing interventions based on the body's predicted resonance state, not just the time of day.
Right. Even consciousness studies could benefit. If these field shifts subtly influence our neural activity, could we develop better techniques for lucid dreaming or meditation by aligning practice with specific phases known to optimize introspection or awareness?
It really forces a shift in perspective. The moon isn't just out there, it's actively shaping our immediate environment in a very intimate way. This idea that biology is fundamentally field literacy, life constantly reading and responding to this invisible hum.
Yeah, it suggests we're immersed in this structured, dynamic field. Every cell in our body participating in a cosmic conversation that's way older than human language.
So what does this all mean? I guess it means trying to step out of thinking purely in terms of superstition versus hard science. Maybe it's about a new science, one that embraces rhythm and structure in a deeper way.
And the key insight from the theory isn't about being controlled by the moon.
No, it's more like being reminded of the specific cosmic rhythm we were tuned to when we first arrived.
The ocean tides are just the most obvious ripple. The deeper tides are within us, in our cells, our nerves, maybe even our dreams, waiting to be understood.
So maybe the invitation here is for you, listening, to consider yourself a graviton listener. What subtle rhythms do you notice, that inward pull or that outward pulse? How does your own internal clock seem to align with that great, unseen metronome in the sky? That's the question this deep dive leaves us with.